There are mushrooms growing in my closet right now. I have 8 boxes. They are around the size of a shoebox, and they are in a tiny closet. This tiny corner closet is lined with fruiting blocks at different stages of growth. Some just pinning, some at peak harvest, some resting between flushes. On a good week, I pull 3 to 4 pounds of fresh oyster mushrooms from that setup. My wife and I haven't bought a single mushroom from a grocery store in years. And some weeks, when the harvest is running ahead of what we can eat, I bring the surplus to the local farmer's market where oyster mushrooms sell for $15 a pound without any effort to move them. $20 got me here the first time. No garden, no outdoor space, no experience whatsoever. Here's the thing about mushrooms that most people don't know. And I mean genuinely don't know, not just haven't thought about. Mushrooms are not plants. They don't photosynthesize, they don't need sunlight, they don't need soil. They don't need seasons. They don't need much of anything except a substrate to feed on, some humidity, and a little bit of airflow. That's it, which means they can grow anywhere. A closet, a bathroom shelf, a basement corner, a kitchen cabinet, under a sink, anywhere with a reasonably stable temperature and enough space for a shoebox. And oyster mushrooms specifically, which is what we're talking about today, are the single fastest, most forgiving, most productive food crop you can grow indoors. They begin fruiting in as little as 7 to 10 days. They don't need special lighting. They don't need complicated soil amendments or fertilizers. And one $20 kit from Amazon will produce multiple harvests before it's done. If you can spray a water bottle and check on something once a day, you can do this. Let me tell you what's actually happening inside that block before we get to the how. Because once you understand it, the whole thing becomes almost impossible to stop thinking about. Inside a grow kit is a block of sawdust and agricultural supplements fully colonized by mushroom mycelium. Mycelium is the root network of a fungus, a white, thread-like web of biological material that is already spread through every cubic centimeter of that substrate before the kit ever reaches you. It looks, honestly, like something has gone wrong. It looks like mold. It is emphatically not mold. That white coating is the organism at full colonization, fully fed, fully charged, waiting for the signal to fruit. The signal is stress. In nature, oyster mushrooms fruit when conditions change, when humidity increases, when temperature drops slightly, when CO2 levels shift. These signals tell the mycelium that the environment has changed enough that it's time to reproduce. So what you're doing when you open the bag and start spraying is mimicking that environmental shift. Fresh air hits the block, humidity goes up. Within 2 to 5 days, small clusters of pins appear. Tiny, stubby, beautiful little mushroom primordia emerging from the cut surface, and then they grow. Mushrooms can double in size every single day during peak growth. You can watch it happen. I've sat in front of a fruiting block with a coffee and just watched it. There is genuinely something almost hypnotic about watching a living thing grow that fast in real time. Here's how to do this from day one. Order a blue, pink, or golden oyster mushroom spray and grow kit from North Spore or a similar reputable seller on Amazon. North Spore kits run about $25 to $30, ship in a box, and arrive fully colonized and ready to fruit. Read the included instructions. They're short and they matter. The short version: cut an X through the plastic on the front face of the block. Spray the cut surface with water 2 to 3 times a day. Keep it somewhere between 60 and 75 degrees Fahrenheit. Room temperature in most homes. That's it. First flush. Mushrooms will begin to emerge in about 2 to 5 days and should be ready to harvest in 7 to 10 days. The caps will be rounded and slightly curled under when they are at peak. Once the caps start to flatten out, harvest immediately. Hold the whole cluster near the base and twist it off in one motion. Pull the whole thing. Leaving stem residue on the block invites mold. The first flush should yield 2+ pounds. Let the block rest for 1 to 3 weeks, keep it damp, and it will produce a second flush. Then a third. The first flush takes about 10 days to harvest and yields an average of 1 pound. The second flush comes about 2 weeks later at roughly half a pound. Total yield from one $25 kit, somewhere between 2 and 4 pounds of fresh gourmet oyster mushrooms, depending on your conditions and care. Oyster mushrooms at a farmer's market run $12 to $20 per pound. Do that math yourself. Now here is where it gets genuinely interesting, and where the cost drops from $25 per kit to almost nothing per pound. Once you've done 1 or 2 kits and you understand what you're working with, you don't need to keep buying pre-made blocks. You can make your own substrate from materials that are free or nearly free. Used coffee grounds, which coffee shops will give you by the bag for free because they're happy to have someone take them, are one of the best oyster mushroom substrates available. High nitrogen content, pre-pasteurized from the brewing process, and available in industrial quantities from any coffee shop that's willing to say yes. Straw works even better at larger scale. Cardboard works. Spent grain from a brewery works. All of it is oyster mushroom substrate. What you add to the free substrate is spawn. The mycelium colonized grain that seeds a new block. A 1-pound bag of oyster mushroom grain spawn runs about $15 to $20 on Amazon and inoculates 5 to 10 pounds of substrate. That 5 to 10 pounds of substrate produces roughly 1 to 2 pounds of mushrooms per pound of substrate over 2 flushes, meaning one $20 bag of spawn and free coffee grounds from down the street produces 10 to 20 pounds of gourmet mushrooms. At $15 a pound retail. You work out the math. The process: mix your coffee grounds or straw with about 10 to 15% spawn by weight in a clean container or Ziploc bag with a few small holes poked for gas exchange. Keep it at room temperature for 10 to 14 days while the mycelium colonizes the substrate. You'll see it turn white as the mycelium spreads. Once it's fully white, introduce it to fruiting conditions the same way you did with the kit. Cut, spray, wait. The first time you do this from scratch and pull 2 pounds of mushrooms from a bag of coffee grounds you got for free, something shifts in how you think about food and where it comes from. One honest note that belongs here. Contamination is the main failure mode for beginner home growers. If something green, black, or orange appears on your block, that's a competing mold and the block is compromised. Dispose of it outdoors and start fresh. The 2 things that prevent contamination: cleanliness when you're handling the substrate and spawn, and adequate airflow once fruiting begins. Oyster mushrooms exhale CO2 as they grow. Without fresh air exchange, CO2 builds up, and the mushrooms grow long, stringy, and weak instead of broad and clustered. If you're growing in a closed space, crack a door or run a small fan on low nearby, not blowing directly on the block, just enough to keep the air moving. That's genuinely the main thing. Contamination and CO2 are the 2 problems. Clean hands, fresh air, and humidity solves both of them. Here's why I genuinely believe there is no better food crop in the world to grow, and I've grown a lot of things. Oyster mushrooms are one of the most nutritionally dense foods you can eat. They are high in protein, rich in B vitamins including niacin and riboflavin, and contain beta-glucans, compounds with documented immune modulating effects backed by decades of peer-reviewed research. Lion's mane mushrooms, a close relative that grows with the exact same method, have been shown in human clinical trials to stimulate nerve growth factor production in the brain, meaning they actively support neurological health and cognitive function in ways that almost no other food does. These are not fringe health claims. They are published science. The food growing in your closet is also medicine. And then there's the survival angle, which, if you think about it for 30 seconds, is unlike anything else in the food world. No sunlight required, no electricity, no soil, no outdoor space, no real water need compared to any other crop, no weeding and no season. You can grow oyster mushrooms in a basement in Minnesota in January in total darkness. You can grow them in a studio apartment in Phoenix in August. You can grow them anywhere on Earth that has a stable temperature between 55 and 80 degrees Fahrenheit and enough humidity to keep a block damp. In a true grid-down scenario, no power, no grocery stores, no supply chain, a bag of grain spawn and a pile of straw produces fresh protein in 10 days. Nothing else comes close to that combination of speed, resilience, and nutritional value. The thing that keeps sitting with me about mushrooms is how completely they reframe what a food garden can look like. Every food system we've been taught assumes you need outdoor space, soil, seasons, a yard, sunlight, a certain climate. Mushrooms need none of that. They grow in the dark. They grow in winter. They grow in apartments. They grow in spaces that nothing else will. And oyster mushrooms specifically are one of the fastest food crops on Earth. 7 days from setup to harvest. Nothing you can plant in a garden comes close to that timeline. Health, money, survival resilience, 0 season, 0 electricity, 0 square footage. I honestly don't think there's a better thing to grow on Earth right now. And I've thought about this a lot. $20, a closet shelf, and food growing while you sleep. Take care and see you in the next one.